How to do a rebrand in 10 steps. Whether you're going to be doing your rebrand on your own or with the help of a creative agency like Studio Stendo, follow this simple step-by-step guide to complete a rebrand from start to finish, including some of the best tools, tips, and tricks we've learned along the way. Now, a rebrand is something to be excited about and also can bring along a lot of anxiety with it. It's a big project that has a lot of potential upside and a lot of hard work and drudgery through the middle. In this video, we're going to share our top 10 tips on how to do a rebrand. The first step of doing a rebrand is to know why you're doing that rebrand. If you're thinking about doing a rebrand because you're just tired of your logo, there's really not any purpose for doing a rebrand. There's probably more value in doing a new brand campaign that livens up what already exists. Rebrands, as opposed to new campaigns, take up a lot of time and energy and effort and retraining of companies and organizations. Usually companies will undergo a rebrand when there's been a change of leadership, they're changing markets or developing new products, and there's an overall shift in what they're currently saying and what they'd like to be saying. In order to best address the issues with a rebrand, you have to really understand what the problem is. Step 2 of doing a rebrand is to identify your brand team. Now you're going to need a team that's knowledgeable, that are experts, and that know your brand inside and out. And that doesn't necessarily mean of design. For you as a client or as somebody seeking a rebrand, it's most important to know these things within your company. Then if you have the skill set on your team to take that project in-house, you can absolutely do a rebrand in-house. When you do it in-house, no one's going to know the company better than the people who have been working on it for so long, but they may not have the skills of doing the rebrand or managing a brand of your scale or caliber or have practice at taking a company where you'd like to take it. On the other hand, branding agencies are experts in taking your current mission or vision, your current communication issues, and transforming it into something that an audience is going to resonate with. So while an agency might not know your company as well as somebody in-house, they're experts at getting to know who you are and distilling your message down into an important brand message. Branding agencies often also know what can go right in a branding process and what can go wrong and help steer you clear of the pitfalls in order to set you up for success in your rebrand process. I've written a whole nother guide about building your brand team and working with an agency, so go ahead and check that out on our blog. Step 3 of how to do a rebrand is to do a competitive analysis. Whether you're thinking about staying in the same market and competing with the same competitors, or shifting markets or looking for a blue ocean, as some marketing experts call it, knowing the playing field that you're entering and the strategy of your competitors is ultimately going to give you an advantage in the long run. Analyzing your competitors thoroughly gives you a roadmap of some things that you could use that they're doing successfully, and also opportunities that your competitors might be overlooking. When you do a competitive analysis, odds are that you'll be surprised at some of the similarities and the differences in your competitors. Step 4 in doing a rebrand is knowing who your brand is for. Now, there's always this distinguishment for business owners that they want to design the brand for themselves, and usually that's how businesses start and where the brands begin when they're bootstrapped. When we move on from that, the brand is really for somebody who's not just the business owner, but the customers, the employees, and a larger spectrum of people than just the owner themselves. While we don't believe that your audience should dictate what your brand does, that's really why we call it a brand identity, because it's about you as the company and the business owner. In order to truly test a brand, you have to make sure it resonates with the people outside of just yourself. One of the best ways to know who your brand is for is to develop personas so that you can think about how other people are going to perceive your brand before you go out and launch it and hear their awful feedback and critique. Developing personas is a great way to know your audience. Step 5 of doing a rebrand is to complete a brand audit. The longer you've been in business, the more your brand has proliferated content on the web, in person, in print, in signage, in relationships, so on and so forth. Your network has probably gotten huge. That said, every good rebrand is backed by good research and knowing where that brand content is. By auditing your brand, you can see what's working, what's not working, what needs to just be tweaked, and what needs to be completely revamped. Oftentimes when companies do a brand audit, they'll find that there are a number of things that they don't necessarily need to fix, and like the old adage goes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. But when you do a brand audit, you'll also find a number of leaks or opportunities in your brand that instead of just doing a patchwork on, you're already doing the work and thinking about an entire encompassing rebrand in order to build a new ship instead of fixing the leaks on an old ship. You need to articulate your brand core in step 6 of doing a rebrand. Your brand core is really an articulation of who you are as a company, a business, and as an individual. I like to use Simon Sinek's start with why verbiage of why, how, what, and drilling down in order to get that language that we need to speak. But ultimately, your brand core is comprised of your mission, your vision, your values, and your purpose. Generally speaking, the broader those things are, or the more impactful they are into a belief system, the more likely you are to have people who get on your side, your page, who join your brand, they get on your bus, and go with you wherever it is that you want to go. Knowing your brand core really helps people get on board with what you want to do as a brand, and they get less concerned about what the visuals actually look like, and more enthralled by what it is you're doing as a company, and what your vision for the future is, and how you're going to get them there. Plus, your brand core is usually what you defer back to when you're making big decisions for the company. Who you're hiring, where you're hiring, what direction you're going to go, whether you take destination A or destination B in any sort of decision time. With a brand core articulated, you can make sure that this is in an easy to access place for all stakeholders of the company. Step 7 in how to do a rebrand is to iron down your brand messaging. I should say clarify. Is that ironic that I said iron down instead of clarify when I'm talking about clarification? Your brand is more than a logo. It's all the words and language that comes with that logo. So when you're clarifying your brand messaging, be sure to pay attention to things like your brand voice, your tone of writing, your brand personality, your tagline, some of your value propositions that you're offering other people, and those brand messaging pillars. Things like this are how you clarify your brand message and be consistent across all sorts of media. Step 8 in doing a rebrand is to design your visual identity. Up to this point, you've gotten down your brand core, your messaging, you know where your competitors are, and you know where the opportunities and the pitfalls are. Now it's time to design a visual identity that encapsulates all of that into one beautiful suite. Your visual identity for your brand is really the facade and everything that makes that first impression for people who are coming into your brand and company. You want to make sure it's powerful and consistent, and it's going to do a number of things and have some certain qualities that we aim for here at Studio Stendo. We like to make sure that visual identities are comprehensive, meaning that we've covered every touch point and we've empowered your team so that they're not lacking some brand asset. We like to make sure that visual identities are flexible, meaning that we might not necessarily know where your brand is going to need to be adapted to in the future, but we can design a system that will be flexible enough to fill like water in a cup that takes on the shape of the vessel. We like to make sure that visual identities are intuitive, that they make sense and people can expand on them and use them in their own sense without having to defer to some really complicated documentation. And of course, we like to make sure that visual identities are accurate. We like to make sure that we're speaking on behalf of your brand visually, which means it's that first impression, we're carrying your brand core, your values, your messaging, all of that in a beautiful suite of visuals. Step 9 of doing a rebrand is to create brand guidelines. Now, there's no such thing as a team that can read minds. And there's definitely not a thing where somebody can read the mind of a designer, a visual output, or the language that you want to use on behalf of your brand. Creating brand guidelines is like creating a toolkit that will empower employees to proliferate, create content, and speak on behalf of your brand, all in a way that brings them into the core and lets them amplify your message on your behalf. Brand guidelines might seem like a nerdy design document, but it's like delegating assignments to somebody else. If you're running your company, you don't want to always be answering what colors to use, what fonts to use, how to word an email, or whether or not that email is worded on behalf of you or the brand, whether you use I or we, what some of your value propositions are, all of that stuff. Rather, creating a comprehensive brand guidelines empowers your team to go out and live your brand. Step 10 of doing a rebrand is, of course, rolling out the new brand identity. Completing your new brand is a huge deal. It's been a lot of work, takes a lot of time and effort, and there's a lot of promise to look forward to. Of course, just finishing the project isn't the end of the project, but launching it is a new project on its own. Be sure to check out some of our other guides on how to properly launch a rebrand. A last and bonus tip of how to do a rebrand is to make sure you support your team and that you as a business owner or institution, organizer, lead, whatever it may be, have support yourself. A rebrand process can feel stressful during the phase and also stressful after the phase. And really, anytime we launch something or publish something into the world, we're opening up ourselves for feedback and critique, whether it's solicited or not. And believe me, when you do a rebrand, you will get unsolicited advice and opinions. But that moment of launch can be a moment of euphoria and is the time to celebrate with your team and people around you. If you're feeling stuck at any point of the rebranding process or feeling discouraged or don't know what to do next, please don't hesitate to reach out and give me a call. Whether you need just an extra pair of hands or someone to take the reins on the project, I'd love to help you nail your rebrand in any capacity. I'm Caleb Dean from Studio Stendo. Thanks for watching, and I wish you all the best on your rebrand.